Hey everybody, on today's video, we're going to be looking at the best state to live. If you notice my voice is a little bit different, it's because I just had a filling and a crown installed, costing me roughly $2,100. We've had a lot of people on our channel tell me that instead of spending money on rims and sound systems, I should invest some money into fixing my teeth, and I think it's a good idea. And it's a great topic for today's video because what makes a state good are things like healthcare, education, safety, and general well-being. Imagine if all the money that was spent in the state of Kentucky on cigarettes was spent at dentists. Quality of life comes from good decisions. And the state that we're going to be looking at today doesn't exactly have the best natural settings. They don't have the greatest beaches. They don't have the greatest weather. But what they do have is people who are making good health decisions, good education decisions, and it's causing them to have the best livability score in the United States. Did these analytics, two states always are on top. That is Massachusetts and New Jersey. On today's video, we're going to consider New Jersey as the best place to live in the United States. We're going to talk about the statistics, and that is a huge part of how we come to our conclusion. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in the last few months, I've been putting a lot more work into research and analytics, matching it with my real life experience to give you guys lists that are not just based off of textbook numbers, but I have realized something in my travels throughout the United States that for the most part, real life experiences that I'm having are starting to correlate greatly with statistics. Sometimes it even shocks me how my real life experiences are reaffirmed by these statistics. So let's break down what makes New Jersey one of the greatest places to live in the United States. And it's not affordability, it's not low property taxes, it's not beautiful mountain scenery. A lot of people have come to think that a great place is a place that's affordable, a place that has natural scenic beauty, and of course, the almighty low property taxes. Ironically, that's actually what the worst places have in common. Crime rates by state: New Mexico, Louisiana, Colorado, South Carolina, Arkansas. These are the states with the highest crime rates. I find it a little surprising that Colorado is on this list, but New Mexico, Louisiana, South Carolina are definitely no surprises. On the other hand, states with about a third of the crime rate are New Jersey, Idaho, Maine, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. These states with the lowest crime rates happen to have about 1/3 the crime of the worst places. That is a very considerable difference. 3 times as much crime is definitely noticeable. Childhood obesity. Number 1 is West Virginia, followed by Kentucky. Number 3 is Alabama, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana at number 7. There's absolutely no reason your children should be fat. Screw you guys, I'm going home. On the other hand, the healthiest children are in Hawaii, Colorado, Massachusetts, California, and number 5, New Jersey. Ironically, Colorado has a lot of crime and obese children. Screw you guys, I'm going home. Smoking rate by states. If you're contaminating your own body willfully, you obviously have no regard even for your own body, which is the source of your own life, people. West Virginia at 23%, followed by Kentucky, Louisiana, Ohio, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, Missouri, and Indiana have the highest percentage of smokers. Recently, I was in Kentucky, which is number 2 at 24%, and I witnessed a girl get off of a school bus with a cigarette in her mouth, and I could hear banjos playing in the background. On the other hand, people in the following states are making healthier decisions. Only 7% of the population in Utah are smokers, followed by California at 10%, Massachusetts at 12%, Connecticut, Hawaii, Washington, Maryland, DC, and New Jersey all between 12 to 13%. I'm sure by this point you're starting to see a correlation between the states that always end up on the worst states and the states that always end up on the best states list. Ironically, Connecticut, while having a small percentage of smokers, does have one of the highest OD rates in the country. Prisoners per 100,000. These are the states that are arresting the least amount of people. Massachusetts only has 94 prisoners per every 100,000 people. That means you're almost as likely to be a prisoner in Massachusetts as you are to get killed in Birmingham, Alabama. I kind of found that interesting that the murder rate in Birmingham, Alabama is about what the prisoner rate is in Massachusetts. That just goes to show how bad, in comparison, these states in the South are compared to these states in the North. New Jersey came in at number 3 with only 136. The worst states for incarceration have rates about 4 to 6 times higher. Number 1 is Alaska with 618. Number 2 is Mississippi, followed by Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Arizona, Alabama, Delaware, Texas, and Georgia in that order. You are almost 3 times more likely to be incarcerated in Alabama than you are in New Jersey. I'm sure by now you're starting to see how disproportionately messed up some of these states in the South are, and that there's a handful of states that are the worst in every single category. We're talking Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, that just have the absolute worst statistics on absolutely every category you could think of. For example, Colorado was an oddball in the crime category, and Utah had a surprisingly low percentage of smokers. You do find states that for one reason or another just end up in an extreme category, but you're going to find that there's regions of the country, predominantly the Northeast, that just have the best statistics in general. And you know what? All of the states that border Canada, the northernmost states, seem to have the lowest murder rates, lowest crime rates, so on, while the states in what's known as the Deep South seem to have the absolute worst of everything, starting off in about Delaware, Maryland, moving all the way back down into Oklahoma, is like a crescent of bad things that are happening. Let's talk about property taxes. So which states have the lowest property taxes? Now, most people would naively assume that having low property taxes is a great thing. But really, if you're not funding your states, you're not funding your schools, you're not funding your roads, you're not funding social programs, what type of state are you really creating? The lowest property taxes are surprisingly Hawaii, and that's very interesting because it is the most expensive state, but the real estate tax rate there is about 0.28, the lowest in the country. But the state has a lot of tourism, and that really might help offset a lot of these taxes. Number 2 is Alabama, where property taxes average right under $900 a year. In the Montgomery metropolitan area where I lived, I saw schools that instead of having central air conditioning, had window units. Instead of having windows, they would have plywood on schools. If you think that living in a state that doesn't fund their schools and other social programs, you're absolutely retarded. New Jersey is the absolute most expensive state for property taxes at 2.5%, averaging well over $5,400 per home. Many of the customers that I met in Florida that moved from New Jersey, they told me they paid between $18,000 to $21,000 per property taxes, but of course they're relatively wealthy people. Florida is kind of the middle of the road when it comes to property taxes, but I know that in Naples, Florida, there's a lot of wealth, and I had people that lived a mile away from my house paying as much as $56,000 a year in property taxes, while I paid well under $1,000 with my homeowner's exemption, or as we call in Florida, homestead exemption. Other states with ridiculously high property taxes are Illinois, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Vermont, Wisconsin, Texas, Nebraska, and New York. Undoubtedly, New Jersey is one of the most expensive places to live, and it also has some of the highest incomes in the United States. So I talked to a friend who lived in New Jersey, and here's what he had to say about living in this state. Employment, lots of companies, high wages with great benefits, proximity to New York City and Philadelphia, a ton of infrastructure, cultural diversity, a ton of options for good healthcare options, many state benefits. Great universities, a great school system, plenty of leisure activities with a diverse geography ranging from beaches to high hills. Crime is low except for a few specific cities. However, he thinks it outweighs how expensive it is, with high property taxes, high income taxes, as well as auto insurance rates being very expensive. He mentioned that it's a very tough state to live in. It's super crowded, extremely expensive, and the weather is not always fun. Basically, if you're a very driven person, you want your children to have the best education, you are a high earner, you have absolutely no problem with going out there and making over $100,000 a year. If you're that much of a driven person and you have very high expectations for the health and education of your family, then New Jersey is the best place to live for driven people. If you want to live in a $5,000 house, have your children smoke, live off of disability and food stamps in a mobile home on the side of a hill infested with bed bugs with a raccoon underneath your trailer, then there's a few states that will be perfect for you. Take, for example, West Virginia, where the overdose rate is 81 out of 100,000. There's states like Texas and Florida that offer a more balanced lifestyle if you just need a little bit of everything. I can't sit here and tell you that New Jersey is the best place for everybody, but if you have expectations for accomplishment for your family, you want them to get the best education, you want them to have high earning income jobs. If you're moving to the United States for a better future, a lot of people who immigrate to the United States, particularly from Latin America and from Asia, have very high expectations for the first generation Americans. New Jersey is the only other state other than Florida that has a Cuban population distributed evenly through all counties at a rate of 0.2 or higher. While there are Cubans throughout the entire state of New Jersey in considerable percentages, there's pockets like West New York, which is a city in New Jersey, and other areas like Union City that have Cuban communities. I say that because Cubans have the highest educational expectations for their children that are first generation Americans, even higher than Asians. So if you don't believe me, you can look that up. Cuban Americans, the first generation born in the United States, the parents set out for them the most academic expectations. That's probably why there's still a huge population of Cubans in New Jersey, because they want their kids to have access to the best schools. Apart from Cubans, there's also Peruvian, Colombian, Indian, and many other backgrounds. New Jersey is a very diverse state. The state of Nevada, for example, has diversity, but it's like the diversity that moved out of California because they didn't want to work that hard. That's not the type of diversity you want. You want diversity like what you have in New Jersey, where communities move there because they have very high expectations for their children born in the United States, have the opportunity to live in a country like this. Absolutely the best is expected from them. Meanwhile, in Covington, Kentucky, a middle school girl hops out of a school bus and lights a cigarette. You're going to see in the United States a huge change of demographics by race versus income. The reason being, as inflation gets higher, as things get more expensive, and as incomes keep rising in expensive places, regular people who many generations ago were wealthy are going to find out that somebody that's been in the United States for 10 years and has been living in a place like California, New Jersey, is going to have a much bigger net worth. And now you're seeing people leaving California and New Jersey of some type of diversity background, moving to rural places with huge amounts of money that they earn through income and through real estate appreciation. Deaths of disparity in the United States are up among the white population 2 to 3 times higher than versus Hispanic or black. Means that today in the United States, the solution to living better isn't to buy somewhere that's cheaper like many YouTubers are telling people. The reality is much different than that. Seems like the answer really isn't to move somewhere cheaper. The answer is to live in a place that's expensive, make a crap load of income so that your children have the opportunity to live in a better place. And I know that doesn't sound like the fun thing to do, but life isn't about what you can take from society. It's about how much you can give to society. And the more you can give to society, the more society will reward you for your efforts. Look, I made the mistake to move to Alabama. And at first I was really happy because of how much easier life was. But I soon realized that I'm a much more driven person than that. And finding the easiest accommodations to live at the expense of my health, at the expense of my life and safety, wasn't worth it. I know it's not easy. I know it's not a fun predicament to look at life in one of these super congested places. I don't think I would make it in New Jersey, I'll be honest. I'm in one of the most expensive places in Florida right now, but I got beaches nearby, I got good weather. You have to be a very driven person to take advantage of all of the benefits living in New Jersey comes with. So after spending a few months really heavily studying analytics, statistics, I have really been trying to gather much more. Like, I feel like as a YouTube creator, I should just study this stuff. Kind of like my wife, Katie, she's dreaming about being a real estate agent. There's her about a year ago looking at the New York City skyline, thinking about being a realtor. And here we are a year later, and she's still working on that. But just like other people who also study analytics and compile lists, I'm going to have to say that it's either New Jersey or Massachusetts, the states that have the best of just about everything. I mean, just look at this view from New Jersey overlooking the New York City skyline. I've been to a lot of places in the United States, and New York City viewed from New Jersey is just one of the most incredible things that you're ever going to see. I don't think photos can really just even explain the immenseness of it and just the incredible vibe that New Jersey has. And really, the only other place I've been to that can even kind of mirror a feeling like this is perhaps along the coast in California. Or maybe Miami in Florida. I mean, there is a reward to living in a place like this. And it may not be the most scenic thing in the world. It may not be natural beauty. But really, the beauty of New Jersey isn't really the landscape. It's the people. It's the ethnic diversity. It's all of the culture that's present here. Here's a bunch of car tires being shipped to Alabama. Hundreds of families in Alabama will enjoy watching those tires burn in their front yard as a family activity. You're probably not going to have a bonfire in New Jersey, but there are a lot of restaurants. There's so much cultural diversity. And while I travel all over the United States, there's a certain authenticity of the diversity to New York City and New Jersey. Successful communities, and it was shocking to me coming from the South, where I felt like this is what happens when you let communities prosper. This is what happens when you give everybody an equal opportunity to be successful if they're hardworking, if they are driven, and if they have this infinite desire to live the American dream that is frankly dead in a lot of places right now. I mean, one of the things that I took from my New Jersey trip is how it really felt like the American dream was still alive here. Like that people here were still trying to start businesses, still trying to find a way that they could both be productive and enjoy life to the full. I can kind of understand how this type of environment creates better people, better educated. And despite the fact that people see people from New Jersey and New York are absolute rude snobs, look, New Jersey and New York have done a magnificent thing. You guys know where I'm going with this, is that they have been sending all their garbage to Florida for decades now. And about 86% of the specimens of New Yorkers and New Jerseyans that you're going to find in Florida are just pure sanitary waste. It's like New Jersey and New York flushed their toilet on Florida and got rid of all their undesirables. And I know you might think that sounds comical, but as comical as it sounds, especially the fact that I put a specific percentage on there. So if you're from New York or New Jersey and you're watching this video from Florida, I'm not saying it's exactly you, but there's a good possibility. I mean, the only thing I can say as a Floridian is at least the absolute worst of it ended up in North Carolina and didn't find themselves as far down as Florida. But regardless, it's hilarious how people in the South and other regions of the country look at Californians and New Yorkers that are leaving their state and they think that these are the ones that are smart, and it's really the vast majority are the dumb ones that took out the equity. These are quitters on life, unless you're retiring or something like that. Hey, what type of plant is that growing up there? I really don't think that the people that are leaving these states really represent what these states are about. So a little bit more on New Jersey. New Jersey is the 7th most educated state in the country, and it has the 4th highest percentage of adults with a bachelor's degree at almost 39%. Home to over 5,000 technology and information companies, a few really good universities, but here's the catch. Out of all the states, it has the 3rd highest income. The households are making almost $90,000 a year, on par with Massachusetts and Maryland and Hawaii and California. These incomes are almost double what the poorest states are at, those being Oklahoma, Kentucky, New Mexico, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, and West Virginia, with Mississippi being the absolute worst. I mean, really, if you're making $40,000 more a year, what is it to pay $5,000 or $6,000 more in property taxes? It's one of those scenarios where you really get what you pay for. And the United States is like that. If you don't pay a lot of anything, don't expect a lot of anything. Don't expect anything to come out of Alabama, West Virginia, or Mississippi, or Louisiana. But if you put your family in Massachusetts, New Jersey, you're going to pay a lot. You're also going to get a lot. So what do people in the South say about people in cities like New Jersey and Massachusetts and California? They say, oh, it all goes to food stamps. It all goes to Section 8. No, it doesn't. Let me give you some real life statistics so you can understand who is really the lazy, who's really living off the government. Because a lot of times when people say, oh, all that money you pay in taxes, it just goes to take care of people. Look, I don't know if that was the case 20 or 30 years ago before I was born, but I'm going to give you some really relevant recent statistics so you can understand exactly which states are abusing the system the most. Because I hear this all the time from people. Well, if you live in New Jersey, you're just putting food stamps in other people's kitchens, or you're paying somebody else's Section 8. Look, I'm going to tell you how it is, okay? These are the states that have the highest participation in welfare recipients. New Mexico is number 1. West Virginia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Alabama. Illinois does have high taxes and high percentage of people on welfare. So we're going to say that Illinois is definitely an exception to what I'm saying. But imagine the states of West Virginia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama that have like really low percentages of taxes in most categories. And then what they do pay in taxes in disproportionate numbers goes to people on welfare. And then they got the nerve to say it's people in New Jersey who are living off the government. And that's why it's important for you to start looking at statistics and analytics and real life numbers and stop getting everything you believe from Fox News, CNN, or some morning talk show on the radio. Because it's wrong and they're lying to you. But when you expose them for lying, People don't really care. Like, I'm giving you guys these analytics right now, and I know a lot of you are listening to it, but you're not really hearing it because you want to continue to believe this. But here's the states with the lowest participation: Wyoming, Utah, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Kansas, Minnesota, New Jersey, Colorado, Idaho, and Virginia. And to not just like no numbers and no statistics, but know what they actually mean. Like, welfare and food stamps are two totally different things. A state can have a qualifying percentage of people who qualify for SNAP and participate in the program be very high, and a state can just have a lot of people that are leeching off the system. Two totally different things. And you need to know not just what a statistic is, but what does it mean. What's the difference between somebody who's disabled and getting food stamps, or somebody who's elderly and getting food stamps, and somebody who's getting food stamps and they're not really trying? So online you can get a county by county map of every county in the United States within their states by percentage of the population that's disabled. And it seems that ironically, disproportionately, the same states that have the most crime, the most consumption of tobacco, the most overdoses, also happen to be the states where the vast majority of the people are. That's right, disabled. And why do they get a disability? So they can get money from the government for free and not have to work. You guys ready for this? The pockets with the highest percentage of people that are disabled are Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, Southern Missouri, Arkansas, parts of Alabama, parts of Mississippi, parts of Oklahoma, and some parts of New Mexico. Is there any surprise to you at all that the people that are actually leeching the system are also the ones that are obese, not taking care of their health, not wanting to pay property taxes? It all correlates perfectly. So you got places in the United States where people are trying to accomplish things: Massachusetts, New Jersey, and you got places that are kind of in the middle, a good balance, like Texas and Florida, and a few other states that land somewhere in the middle. And then you got states where people just want to get food stamps, cigarettes, and EBT: West Virginia, Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I've been sitting here studying these analytics for months now, just looking at everything. So when I make these YouTube videos, I'm not just giving you guys my opinion. I know what I'm talking about. If somebody's changing the oil on your car, they're changing the transmission on your car, they've been through hundreds of cars. They know which cars are most likely to have the transmission go out. If you pull up in a Honda Civic, they know which sensor is most likely to go out because they've gone through hundreds of them. As a YouTuber, I do the same thing. I study these analytics. And as I go through these analytics, you might be studying to be a dentist. If you're studying to be a dentist, you might be looking at a lot of people's mouths every day. I don't know. If you work at a fast food restaurant, you might be looking at a lot of fries, hamburgers, and obese people every day. Me, I look at statistics every day because I'm a YouTuber. I can't tell you why the ice cream machine's always broken at McDonald's, but I can tell you that statistically, analytically, combined with my travels across the United States, I have found a disturbing trend in like these 7 states we've talked about, where all their statistics are absolutely the worst imaginable in every category imaginable. Like 3 in the morning, I wake up to pee, and I'm like, I wonder what states people pee the most. And I look up at analytics where people pee the most, and I guarantee it's probably West Virginia. All right, so here's an interesting category of statistics. The states with the lowest cancer rates are all on the West Coast. The states with the highest lung cancer rates: number 1, Kentucky; number 2, Arkansas; number 3, West Virginia; number 4, Mississippi; number 5, Tennessee. Now, if we narrow it down to the most cancer-prone cities, according to menshealth.com, number 1 is Corpus Christi, Texas. Also, this area of southern Texas has a problem with having a lot of obesity, probably a correlation there. Number 2 is Charleston, West Virginia. Alright guys, so there is our video for today on why New Jersey is the best state to live. It all comes down to the choices that the people living there are making and the demanding lifestyle. That means people have to study, read, continue to grow, have higher incomes. And while a lot is expected from you, there's also a lot of rewards for living in a place where education is valued and where incomes are greater. Interestingly, while living in Alabama, I actually was able to lose about 40 pounds. Just because you live in a place where other people have bad habits doesn't mean you have to be like them too. And in fact, being around backwards and uneducated people in Alabama for a year made me realize the importance of education. And it took me a while to be able to start reaching for the things we're doing now. But once we moved back to Florida, me and Kate decided that we're going to focus on education, health, and just giving ourselves a much better standard of living. We understood clearly that this would require that we would have to work more, perhaps be a little bit more stressed out, and perhaps the odds would be heavily stacked against us. But we realized that seeking a place like Alabama where everything was easier, it was easier to make income, everything was just simple and easy, that wasn't the most rewarding lifestyle for us. We realized living in an environment like that, as you can see, Alabama was consistently throughout the list of all of these worst statistics, that living in a place like that isn't what we wanted. So we're in Florida now, in a state that's kind of in the middle of all these categories, but we're in a region of the state where statistics for income, education, and everything else are higher. And around us, we see people that are trying to do it better with their lives. And just being able to see that kind of gives us the desire that we too can be able to obtain it. And despite all the jokes I make, I did find people in Alabama that were super hardworking and super driven. They weren't the majority, but they were. They're out there. Then sometimes the lure becomes materialistic things, where now education, health is kind of taking the forefront of what we're seeking. And it's a journey. It's not easy. And at least for us, when we move in the future, we've considered places like the New York City area, Nashville, or somewhere in California. If we're going to continue renting, we've talked about something like Miami, and if we're able to become homeowners, somewhere a little bit north of Tampa because of the housing affordability, but still being close to Florida and the things we love. You know, your personal decisions say a lot about what you're trying to do with yourself. Like today, I spent $2,000 in a dentist, and if you combine my dental expenses this week with Katie's, we've put $3,000 into our bodies. Maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, if I had $3,000, I would have likely put it into a lift kit or rims for a vehicle or a sound system for a vehicle. You can continue to just throw your money at things that are worthless, or you can say, it's not the vehicle, it's not the house, it's me as a person. You can't really get your health back, and what you put in your brain, nobody can take that away from you. So I think a huge level of maturity and just becoming a better version of yourself is understanding the value of not so much what you have, but what you are, who you are. You can lose houses, you can lose your freedom, you can lose cars, you can lose properties, you can lose money. But the one thing you don't want to lose is your body, your health, the person you are. After all, we've heard the saying, there's more hope for a live dog than there is for a dead lion.